Vocalo Radio, Chicago's only urban alternative, 91.1 FM. Nudia in the afternoon here with you. I have a special guest in the studio. Actually, a couple people. This isn't a guest. We do have Ari Mejia in here with us. Hello, Ari.
Hey, I'm back.
And with our special guest, this is who I met the first time.
Quite special.
We've got. Let me get the sound effects ready, okay? In studio. Right now with us, they made time for us before their big show tonight. We have Hurray for the Riff Raff. Hello.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you in. And so, Ari,
Yes.
I mean, you were pretty excited about this interview.
Yeah, when this came down the line, I was like, please, may I? I would love to. Rocio, if you must, that's our Sunday jam. But like, let me. And it worked out. You're here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So you're playing tonight?
Yes, at Lincoln Hall. We're playing, and Namdi is going to be opening. Namdi's been on tour with us, and he's also playing in the band, which is really cool. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we were just kind of jamming about like Chicago people.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, I love like Chicago and the artists here.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. We're about to go on a Western tour, like West Coast dates with Sen Morimoto, who's also a Chicago musician.
We love.
You know, I'm just a big fan of like the music community here. It seems like people really care about each other and take care of each other, which is like, I live in New Orleans. It's a similar vibe. So I think it's really special what's going on.
Well, you know, it kind of ties into clearly my roots here, your roots here.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, after you released an album then, first self-released album. You played in my yard in Pilsen.
Whoa.
I know when you walked in, I wanted to say it. I'm like, I'm going to save it for radio.
Wait, this is a big reveal.
I also didn't believe this story. I couldn't believe this story.
This is amazing.
You played in my yard, and then me and my friends did a play. So just kind of like, it's been a long road, and I'm just gonna say, like, I've been so blessed to like witness and kind of low key be peripherally a part. I mean, in community. And I was reading and seeing how you had said that this album, the writing, feels reminiscent to that like 2008 time.
Yeah.
In particular, like the vulnerability, and I don't know, just kind of wanted to like hear as you're like honestly like time traveling, time jumping, and this is an album about time.
For sure. It's also an album about how I struggle with a bad memory. So this is a perfect example.
No worries.
It's really, this record is like the closest I've come to making a memoir. You know, I suffered a big loss of my dad right before I recorded this record, and it really just like went into the process of me just thinking about memory and thinking about sacred moments and people that mean so much to me, and how, like, what you take with you as you enter new chapters into your life and what you have to leave behind. And how even letting things go or letting people go, it doesn't mean that it's over, really. You know, I felt this thing about time for a long time, that nothing's ever really over. You know, it is not linear like we're told it is. So
I truly, yes, agree. Couldn't agree more. I'm sorry about your dad.
Thanks.
My dad too passed away 2 years ago. There's something that in this as well, like when people pass, or the infiniteness, like they're everywhere.
Yes.
It's pretty uncanny. Or I mean, whatever, as death is something that we think we try to understand, and ultimately like the acceptance of grief and all that is that we can't. It's grief is ongoing. Grief is ongoing, just like nothing is
just
ever.
like love is.
Yes.
And that's a big part of this record also, is what is me going through the process of understanding that grief is love, and that it's not a punishment. It's actually a experience of how much you loved someone or loved a time in your life, So this whole record is me. It's like a memory box. It's like, these are sacred moments. These are people that I haven't seen in decades, and yet like I think about them daily, and also talking about how there are moments that were very fast that still had a lasting effect. Because I think we're taught that relationships have to be really long for them to be important, And really, there are friendships when I was 17 that lasted like 2 weeks, And those people just changed my whole life, and they're still changing my life.
That really resonates. I think a lot about that too. I think also being in a time of deep transformation, deep change, like the discomfort and like how that creates so much space inside and in the work. And I guess that's kind of was one of my questions. What I was curious to like hear you talk about was the way that, you know, the back and the presence, the past, like the duality, the dialect actually of like the dialectic of like holding those multiple truths at once, and how like nostalgia, like on my way here, I've been listening to this album like nonstop, full disclosure.
Oh, cool.
And just the way that you're able to like the presence, the gift of presence, that kind of the feeling of nostalgia and like thinking about people from the past. And, like clearly you're in this moment back here, but it's giving you the gift of here. And I just was kind of curious your thoughts about how this album holds so much of that.
Yeah, because especially playing like folk music, when I first started to play it, I found that people were very nostalgic for times I was like, whoa, I don't want to live in those times. That sounds bad. But so I don't ever want to get stuck in the past. I want to be here for this present moment, but how do you honor it? And I think also a lot of this record is about kind of documenting moments and movements. I realized as I was writing this record, wow, growing up in the anti-war movement in New York City, where I'm from, that had a huge effect on me. And how do I document that radical culture or that community that raised me through song, whether it's just like little bits of lyricism? To me, that's like, I want to have that on the history books. I want to say these people existed. So that's how I was kind of dealing with it, is I was thinking of myself as like a historian in a way.
Well, yeah, I also, like, you kind of went there too, I remember catching you on Democracy Now! A few years ago. Patron St. Amy, shout out.
Oh, I've never been so nervous as to meet Amy Goodman.
Well, of course, like the lineage of, like you talking about the anti-war movement, the lineage of like the role of music in movement building. We know, that art is inherent to the movements, and just like how you have felt your place in that. And you kind of mentioned that about this album too, like how, maybe even just the trajectory of how that has lived in the work.
Yeah, I've always felt like I wanted to make art for my friends. That's who kept me alive. And I just wanted to, witness what we were going through and write it down. And, when my friend group would lose someone, I wanted to honor them. And this was kind of the first time, though, that the lens went on me in a deeper, more vulnerable way, because I saw myself as like, a witness. And then suddenly I was like, I'm going through this heavy loss. And it turns out I really need everyone around me. I think something that I struggle with is being like very individualistic in the way that I'm like, I got it. Don't worry about it. I'm out hustling. I'm on tour. And this was a period of my life that I really learned I have to be the one to say to my friends, I need you. I can't do this by myself. And I think that's a really humbling, good thing to go through. It's scary. But, when my friends tell me they need me, I'm like, okay, I'll be right there. I love to hear that, So I had to do that myself.
So I know I'm again resonates. So maybe that's why the album does too so much. Like there's so much that's going on right now that, kind of culturally and across our country, like there's like collective pain in such a real way that there's something really visceral that feels so easy to connect with. Before we walked in, you were talking to like, wow, this album is being really received in a different way. It's
incredible. Like the feeling that I get at these shows that I just did, this run, maybe 3 days after the record's out, people were already singing the words back at me. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've just never really gotten that response before. And it's just like, it makes me emotional every night, because I'm like, I never thought I would like give up, because I don't really know how to do anything else. But I definitely felt before making this record like, wow, I don't know if this is a sustainable industry for me. I feel very sensitive. I feel so like lost, and getting this response from people is like, a grounding moment of, okay, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to keep at it and keep at the craft of it, you know. But I do think we're collectively thinking like we want a different world. How do we make it? And so a lot of the lyricism in this record also is saying, okay, well, then we have to let some things fall. And it's going to be scary and it's going to be messy, but we're going to do this and we're going to meet the moment. So much about this record is like talking about the past and yet being like, but we're here now. So what are we going to do together now, you know?
I think, yeah, it's not, that's why I was asking about holding the both. It's, you do it so, I don't know, like, it's grace. It's like,
Thank you.
yeah, it really hits. And I think that's something, you know, I think that there's always going to be this really human part that just like wants to go to the core, and not just like float on the surface. So like, also like, it's hard, it's painful out here. And like, when we cut to the quick, like, oof, like, are we ready? But we can't,
Yeah.
it's a moment that we can't, I don't know. I'm just kind of like, in the soup of it. But I feel that. And I feel like this album, like, really gives us that space to explore.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to create a container, you know, and I didn't want all the songs also to be super heavy. I wanted them to be celebrations. Like, to me, the song Colossus of Rhodes means a lot because
I love it so much.
it's a collection of what I think is beautiful and people that I think are beautiful and artists that I'm trying to give shout outs to other artists like Eileen Miles and also an outsider artist named Buzz Blur. I want to have a container that's like, for 3 minutes, you get to live in this beautiful, special place where we're safe for like 3 minutes, you know? And I think that's, you know, that's like what I wanted to do. And I feel really lucky that, you know, sometimes you work really hard on a project and it doesn't come together for reasons outside of your control. And then sometimes there are these magic moments. And I do believe also that it's my dad, and I believe that it's like my ancestors helping me. So I just feel really grateful.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Because I was want to ask about that song, and also, but like, I'm like, oh, it's a love song, which it is.
It is, totally.
But it's like, you know.
Yeah, it's like a love song to many different people in my life, and also kind of just to like a community. It's like a love song to people that feel under threat and who just need, like I said, to like get under a fort, like a pillow fort, and just be like, look at this beautiful thing, look at this beautiful thing, you know?
Yes.
So that's
Please,
like
more of that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I do have a question.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you were, I don't want to, you didn't say crossroads, but it felt like you were like, I don't know how much longer I could do this as an artist.
Yeah.
And I've heard that, so like we hear so many stories from artists. It's like that they're almost at that point and then something amazing happens.
Yeah.
Like kind of almost feels like a break, you know, kind of like, or like they finally receive the accolade or the praise that, you know, kind of, they're like, this is what I've been working so hard for. So what would be your advice to other artists? Like there's so many creatives in the city and so many like upcoming artists that listen in and they, you know, hear their music here. So what would be your advice if someone's like, I don't know, like,
how do you take care of your
how
heart
much longer like I could go, you know, like,
sure.
if I could still keep doing this, like, you know, what would be your advice for someone who's ready to like throw in the towel?
Well, I definitely think I learned about, like I said, depending on friends. Like, it can get so isolating to be especially a touring musician. And I needed to really decide that I had to make time for being around the people that like really love me and support me, because before I'd be in a workaholic mode of like, I can't see you while I'm in town because I got to go do this and this and this. And I had to, before this record, say, I am going to go take 3 hours to go see my friend who loves me because I miss them. And I'm like hurting myself by saying I'm too busy or something. And I think that those moments really got me through. And also, honestly, like really leaning into, it's kind of a cliche, but like who I really am, like the the specificity. I can't say that word.
I think that sounded right. It sounded right. Yeah.
Of me, of like my language, my experiences. I used to be a little bit embarrassed, not like embarrassed, but I guess that is the word of, I used to be like a punk kid who like ran away from home and was like traveling by freight train. That's the original way I came to Chicago, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like
It sounds like a book. It sounds like a movie.
but at the same time, like I used to be a little bit embarrassed of that and be like, I don't want to still be talking about that time in my life. Like that was a long time ago. People are gonna be like, get over it. And with this record, I had to be like, that's where I come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was really my experience. So I'm just gonna have to talk about my life. Like this is what I went through. This is what I experienced. And now I'm getting this response of like, even though people have had a totally different life experience than that, they can feel that I'm just like getting to the root and being like super vulnerable. So I think like believing that people want to hear your unique story. That's like what I'm looking for.
It's beautiful.
And I
lean in, y'all. Lean in.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about, because for a lot of creatives, there's work-life balance with quote-unquote normal people, right? You're like, once you're out of the office, you're out, right? But when you're creative, your work is your life. And it's not in an unhealthy way, but sometimes it could be, you know? But it's weird. You're like, how do I make this divide when my work is my life? My life is my work, you know? So I love that you're kind of distinguishing. I've asked a few artists different derivatives of that question, and I don't think anyone's ever said lean on your friends, you know?
That.
Yeah.
I love that.
It really changed a lot for me to admit to myself that I can't do this by myself, you know? So I'm really grateful. And I'm also just grateful that my friends have stuck around for so many years of me being in and out of town and like trying to be a good friend and answering all the texts and remembering birthdays and like being like, how are you doing? You know? So that's definitely my advice.
Well, and that kind of gets into like really kind of the last question I have here, but you know, you mentioned, I read about how you talk about your dad. And like he was really good at enjoying.
Oh yeah.
It kind of ties into what you're saying. And what we're talking about is like you're saying that balance and like the two, but I guess my question for you is about joy and pleasure and how like when you're maybe even thinking about him, but you like, what does that look like? What is that to you? What does that look like for you?
Well, this is a great town for it because it's food for me.
I never would have guessed that.
Like, also, that's definitely a thing about my dad. My dad, like, loved to ball out on food. He was like a Vietnam vet. He had, like, the craziest life. And he, in the later years of his life, was just like, let's go out to eat. And he just loved to have fun and be silly. And we would kind of, like, argue about it because I was like a goth kid. It was just like, why are you laughing all the time? You know? And now it's like this goofball. This like really this gift that he left me of when he was gone. Suddenly I was like, wow, the way that I can honor him the best is by like eating delicious food and like laughing with my friends and, you know, like going and doing something beautiful. I really feel lucky that that's like the legacy that he left, you know?
Yeah.
He was definitely also losing him. It was this thing of like, I realized he was the person I cared the most about what he thought because he was a musician and he was an artist. And after his passing, I was like, well, I know my dad thought I was cool. I know my dad was like, yeah, you're doing the thing. So it gave me this freedom to just kind of be like, I got that in my back pocket, you know?
I also just want to like shout out or like commend that, you know, the last track of like kind of mashing up the voice.
Yeah.
And I once made this piece about my dad where it starts and ends with a voicemail and just like,
wow, how cool.
You kind of like I don't know if you feel, like how every time I'm like, oh wow, I can't believe I did that. Like, just how, the presence of voice. Clearly, we love voice in this family.
Yeah.
But how just profound that was and continues to be. And when you said he loves food, I'm like, I do know he loves making that chicken.
Yeah, exactly. That voicemail was such a perfect example of him. Also, just like, he was a jazz guy. He loved Latin jazz. And you can hear it in the way he talks and the way he jokes around and in his voicemails, And also, I just felt like it was important because he says in this voicemail that I had happy eyes when he saw me. And it just stuck with me like, wow, this is what my dad wants for me, is like a freedom and a fearlessness. And just like, we have so much stuff that we have to work on as a society, but we can still do it, like loving each other and enjoying beauty. So
here's to that.
I love it. So you're going to be at Lincoln Hall tonight.
Yes.
What a beautiful venue.
Yeah.
Great drinks, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you can't stop by, what time do doors open?
I'm pretty sure they're at 7. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And Namdi opens.
Yeah,
Also
Namdi.
Vocalo fam.
Yeah. Local genius. I'm
Awesome.
obsessed.
So we can see you and Namdi tonight. What a great way for your Thirsty Thursday. or look, if you're not thirsty, hydrated Thursday.
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
water, club soda.
Your ears always be thirsty. How about that?
Yes, your thirsty ears. Where could people find you and keep up with you?
Well, you can find me on all platforms under Hurray for the Riff Raff, and that's Hurray, not HOO.
I had a coworker
I know it's a different spelling.
It happens.
Yeah, but and my name's Alynda Segarra, and I'm all over the internet.
I love that. And people could buy the album, listen to it now.
The new album is called The Past Is Still Alive, and it's out now, and I'm sure it's in local record stores. That we got like a really beautiful vinyl, and we got some posters too at record stores around town that you get when you buy a record. So definitely support your local record stores.
Oh, I love that. And thank you so much for being in here with us. And we want to, end this with another song from the album.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you introduce it, maybe say a couple words, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah, this next one I really love. It's called Hawk Moon, and it's an ode to the first trans woman I ever met when I ran away from home. Her name was Miss Jonathan, and I love this song.